This is the John Brown Alliance, where we don't fear, we fight. From time to time, I make poor judgment, and I did make poor judgment in this case I'm about to bring to you. There is an individual on social media who I think is detrimental to our cause right now as far as stopping the United States of America from becoming authoritarian. I'm not going to mention that person's name right now because I'm hoping by delivering this message, he will get quiet. Sometimes, and I have something like 14 followers, people get a little wrapped up in popularity and they keep putting out content that appeals to a certain demographic. Now, this person has taken hold in places like Africa, throughout the United States, and the black population on the topic solely of white privilege. I agree that this person has every right to voice his or her opinion, but he does not have a right to be MAGA light in this moment and label certain organizations and certain protests, like the No Kings protest, as white privilege. So I have been doing this over a couple of weeks now, but I'm not following this person anymore. I tried to keep listening. I tried to keep myself open to him, but it's still the same thing. Now, a one-trick pony can only spew sperm into the same mare before that shit gets old. And it's gotten old now. And it's gotten offensive to black people and veterans and elderly people and disabled people that have been attending the No Kings marches. I don't know what this person all the way out in California thinks is going on out here. But this individual has not lifted a finger to attend one of these protests out here on the East Coast in Washington, D.C., and find out what it's about. All he did was put it down from over there all the way out in California. But I digress. This is the John Brown Alliance, where we don't fear, we fight. If you're done with MSNBC and CNN, if you'll notice that many of their former stars have come to YouTube, and they have their own channels now. If you want to support the last bastion of free speech, please like and subscribe to this video. If you will, we want to reach 100 subscribers by the end of the month of October, if we can. If we can't, please keep listening, and we'll appreciate what we can get. But my information is more valuable to you than you're subscribing for free to me. Know that. Back in the early 1990s, now Congressman Jamie Raskin had graduated from Harvard Law School. I used to live on Wyoming Avenue, Northwest DC, in his mother's house. And the first time I met him was around 1993, 1994. And his mother asked me a question as a person of color at her table. Let me first tell you what we had. I was invited to a dinner. And we had roast beef, new potatoes, and something else. I can't remember. But I was sitting at the table with Jamie Raskin and a bunch of other people, including my husband at the time. And he was German. And she asked me some kind of question. And before I could answer, Jamie Raskin ran right in there and said, blah, 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 blah. And as a person of color, my mouth was shut. I was godsmacked. Why? Because he said everything I wanted to say, but felt afraid to say at that table. There has been no daylight between that day I sat at that table with now Congressman Jamie Raskin and Congressman Jamie Raskin today. None whatsoever. This man sat there and recited the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, talked about Thomas Paine right there at the fucking table. And this was 1990 something. A few years after that, I was sitting at my father's dining room table. And he turned the TV on, and we all rushed to the living room. And we saw the Ku Klux Klan walking down Pennsylvania Avenue. I mean, thousands in white robes. A big ceremony. And I asked my father that day, who is of course a man of color, how can this happen in America, in Washington, D.C., and Chocolate City? And he said, everyone has a right to free speech. What I promised him is a victim of the Ku Klux Klan for generations, that I would make it so he would never see that sight on his television again. The very next year, we and other organizations, there were no leaders, as Nicole Wallace asked like a dumbass last night on MSNBC. Movements don't have leaders. At any rate, the next year we went down there and we waited for the KKK to get out of the buses, and they did. Somebody threw a rock or something at the Grand Wizard's face. He got back on the bus and they rode out. Mission accomplished, right? No. The next year, they came back, just like white supremacists do, thinking we forgot what they did to us and our ancestors. So we went back the fuck out there with many more people. This time, thousands. And they wouldn't even get off the bus. To this day, the Ku Klux Klan cannot march down the streets of Washington, D.C. in their white robes and hoods, because what we did in the 1990s, you can call it peaceful or non-peaceful, but whatever it was, we don't have it here anymore. Now, let me get back to today, what I saw on TV that disgusted me to the hilt. More of the same. and why you need to turn away from corporate media and turn to YouTube. Here we are once again with Al Sharpton on MSNBC lecturing people like me who are here because of violence by white people who bred my ancestors. Black people who fought against them. And every black veteran who fought in a war on behalf of the United States telling me that we need to be nonviolent. You know what nonviolence got us? Nancy Pelosi doing nothing. Black people like you electing white 8-pack individuals into Congress, taking money from Israel and other interests that do not align with the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King, John Lewis, James Chaney, and Emmett Till. Yet you got on your motherfucking knees after John Lewis died and talked about how you were going to move forward, Nancy Pelosi, and you had your marching orders. Did your marching orders include not accepting money from terrorist organizations? Let me tell you something. The Democratic Party, except for a few individuals like Jamie Raskin and Jasmine Crockett, and others, Greg Cesar, Chris Van Hollen, Chris Murphy, like I said, it's MAGA light. I am too through with this bullshit. Some of you might be dumb enough to think that the Supreme Court is going to save you. The best defense you have against authoritarianism and all of your jobs and money being seized by the ultra-rich is to keep the government shut down. No one is going to stand up for you in Congress, except for a very few. The Supreme Court belongs to Donald Trump. Every faction of law enforcement right now belongs to Donald Trump. So your sovereignty and your liberty depends upon you. Not only does it depend on your physical sacrifice, but it depends on your monetary sacrifice. There is no relief coming because thousands upon thousands of Americans have lost their jobs. And if you think for one moment that once Democrats take the knee to Donald Trump and open the government simply on Medicaid, that this motherfucker is going to give you the money that is agreed upon, not going to happen. I don't know if you remember this. But when Donald Trump came into office, Doge fired multiple thousands of Americans from their jobs. This drove up the unemployment rate, which is not now being recorded because Donald Trump has decided it should not be recorded and fired anybody that had anything to do with this. Abuse in the streets has ramped up because, in my opinion, they have used all that Doge money to keep ICE funded. It is not right now or just yet local police or the National Guard who is responsible for all the atrocities, the deaths, and the abuse that are going on in streets all over the United States of America. It's ICE funded by Doge. If I'm wrong, prove it. Where's the money at? Nobody in Congress is asking where it went. But we are. We paid that. Donald Trump is in violation of the Impoundment Control Act. This means that Congress allocated funds to states last year that were doged. And he has now decided that he is going to allocate them where he wants. That's last year, not the continuing resolution and not the next funding of the government for the next year. That has nothing to do with that. Doge funds are unaccounted for. Now, we heard months ago that ICE is getting ready to run out of funds because they bought a personal aircraft for Kristi Noem. You've got all this cosplaying going on. You got people up there getting outfitted with military shit. We have no accounting of this. There is no transparency. And when Donald Trump's prostitutes hold press conferences and say it's transparency and the terrorists are Antifa, you keep listening to this shit, polishing it off, and moving on. There's no moving on. Because while you're sleeping at the wheel and not understanding exactly what the fuck is going on, we're still demanding accountability for these funds. Not only from Congress, but from the White House. $27.24 billion in funds allocated to Democratic districts are still frozen. That is $27.24 billion funds unaccounted for. I'm sure they've been spent. I am absolutely sure. So you want to know when the government shutdown is going to end? It's going to end when we put Meals on Wheels for seniors back so that they don't starve to death. It's going to end when we compensate veterans for their medical bills, for burn pits. During wars, we sent them over there too. It's going to end when every child has 3 meals a day in America. It's going to end when there are fewer homeless veterans. It's going to end when we have a guarantee that every single elderly person will not be thrown out of a nursing home due to Medicaid cuts. It's going to end when federal funds are released to blue states as allocated through Congress. It's going to end when ICE agents stop disappearing people. It's going to end when every terrorist that occupies our government is gone. The New King's March takes place in a few hours. I would strongly advise American citizens to look after their own protection and the protection of their neighbors. No Insurrection Act, no king, no Supreme Court, and no other individual of flesh and blood can erase the Constitution or take away your rights. This is the moment. This is the revolution. And this is where we fear nothing and fight hard. We don't need a lecture. We don't need advice at this point. The older generation has failed us. It is time, right now, for a new solution. That solution is not going to come from MSNBC or CNN. It's going to come from right here. And your allegiance to this nation as a true patriot, a real American, and someone willing to sacrifice that this democracy continues. Creator, bless us all tomorrow, because this is the beginning of a beginning, or a beginning of an end. This is the John Brown Alliance. When you see something wrong, do something right.